Hey guys, we are jumping right into the final figure in the Kingpin wave of Marvel Legends. That is, of course, the Build-A-Figure itself, our Kingpin figure, and this is one that I know a lot of folks are really looking forward to. Myself, personally, I was really on the fence, and then I kind of dove headfirst into this wave. This is not a Build-A-Figure that I was overly looking forward to by any means. Not a huge Kingpin fan. Certainly a fan of the character and his various entities that have existed in the Marvel various properties, but it's not one that I was really gung-ho about. Of course, I do have him here, so obviously I was interested enough. And he's a pretty cool figure. There are some issues here and there, but I think Hasbro's done a pretty good job here. I'm sure this guy's going to appear pretty high on some folks' lists just because this thing frankly destroys the old Toy Biz figure. That thing is an abysmal piece of junk as far as I'm concerned. This guy is a much-needed update to a very, very bad figure. So let's jump right into it. As usual, take a look at articulation, see what this guy can do. That's going to be the big, maybe pain point for some folks. It just really depends on how you're going into this figure. So we, of course, have our enormous Kingpin here, and he's not the most agile character in the Marvel Universe by any means. We all know that he's not fat. He's, you know, fully muscle here, but he's not overly agile, and it really shows in this figure. So we've got a head that can look up. It's a disc hinge. Down a little bit. I wish he could look more down. That's frankly one of my biggest disappointments. Side to side on the head. Arms go out, they rotate. You've got a single jointed elbow with rotation. You do not get 90 degrees on this one though. You're just not gonna do it based on that sculpt. You've got hinged and rotating wrists. He does have an upper diaphragm joint, so swivel side to side. He can go back and forward just a little bit. I mean, it's mostly a wiggle wobble type situation at best. Legs go out, they kick forward, they kick backwards. Thigh cut. Single rotating knee, and then you've got a little bit of wiggle down here at the ankles. Frankly, there's not much. It's just the sculpt is getting in the way. You can't really avoid it. I do think that he is decently enough articulated from the waist down. My only real issue with his articulation is that once you start moving the various pieces, you've immediately destroyed this line work that's in here. And honestly, that on a personal level just bugs me. It kind of annoys me. It gets, you know, it's like a personal tick basically. It just kind of rubs me the wrong way. So that bothers me just from a personal level. And then he is, I mean, he's relatively under articulated from a general Marvel Legends standpoint. There's no denying that he doesn't have as much articulation as almost any other figure. He's really, really restricted, but at the same time, I can't fault him for it either. He's a big guy, he's a big figure, he's not agile, and it shows. And mostly, I would say that you're going to have this guy just standing looking menacing. That's what I'm going to do with it, and I think it excels at that point. If you're really looking for a dynamic Build-A-Figure, you are in the wrong place. Now, as far as this guy's overall look and design, I think they've done a pretty good job here. There is a very marked lack of paint on this figure, though. I'm assuming that's a calculated move on Hasbro's part here, and frankly, I don't really blame them, but at the same time, I would like to see something somewhere, some line work, maybe a little shading or something. But for the most part, this guy is a lot. I gotta stress that. He's a lot of molded plastic. Again, they're kind of going for that classic Kingpin look, which personally is what I want. So he's leaning towards that classic side, and he always wore that big white suit. So you can't really fault him there, but like the legs are all molded, the feet are all molded, the chest is molded, the arms are molded, the hands are molded, and then you do have paint accents here and there. So you've got the shirt cuffs coming out of the wrists here. You've got the shirt itself. You've got the metallic purple tie, the metallic purple kerchief. You've got the gold buttons. And then you do have the kind of rubbery jacket piece. So this is one of those over jackets that makes it so that you can actually have articulated arms and he's not one brick of plastic. So this is the part that makes the suit a suit. You could take this off if you wanted. I'm not sure if you would want to, but you can pop the arms off. It'll slide right off. And then you do have, of course, you've got this painted ring here, so you've got the gold band with the red jewel. The hands are, of course, different sculpts. So you've got a fist on the left, and you've got a gripping hand on the right for, you know, maybe holding a figure, holding a character's head, or, of course, holding his accessory. There is some decent sculpt work down here on his shoes, and these are some monster shoes. There's no paint on them, so it's kind of hard to pick up some of that detail unless you got light shining in the right spot, but he does have a lot of detail on those shoes. There's just not much to bring it out of any real note. So yeah, he's a big block of white but again, at the same time, that's not necessarily a bad thing. My only real negative in that regard, and this is maybe something for down the road, is that the more you handle this guy, the dirtier he's going to get. Your grubby, nerdy hands are going to, you know, goop him up eventually at some point, so just maybe keep a watch. But that's not a knock on the figure itself. The design is the design. I just worry that down the road he might discolor, or at the very least be covered in some sort of smudgery. Now the head on this figure, though, I think is really well executed. Among all of the sculpted things that he has going for him, I think the head is definitely the key deciding factor as to why I was even remotely interested, because this standard head sculpt, the more just sort of stoic, slightly angry expression, really works for me. Of course, you've got the big bald head. His head does look kind of small against this body, but it's not small in a bad way. It's just more of a proportional thing. It certainly looks like it fits when you've got him right in front of you. You got some wrinkles on the forehead and under the eyes. The eyes are nicely painted. Eyebrows are nicely painted. It's a very comic-y style look, which again is the thing I go for the most. So I think it works really nicely here. I don't have any real gripes when it comes to this particular head sculpt. I think it fits the figure. It fits the look. It's more of that classic style while being maybe a little bit more updated. It doesn't look exactly like what I think of when I think of the Kingpin, but it definitely looks like a version of the Kingpin at the same time. Now, speaking of head sculpts, we do, of course, have accessories to talk about, one of which being a head sculpt. So this is an entire second head. And I gotta point out here that it is definitely not normal to get accessories with Build-A-Figures. Frankly, it's not all that common, so kudos to Hasbro for even doing it. But I do not like this extra head sculpt, not at all. I don't like the expression on the face. It does not look like he's angry. It looks like he's straining. I don't know. I honestly think he's on the toilet when I look at this head sculpt. It just doesn't do it for me. It's sculpted well enough. You've even got like a vein that runs down the forehead, which frankly I really like. The mouth is nicely done. It's just something about the way those eyes come to a point that really don't work for me. And when you turn this guy to the side, something is really funny going on here. There's just a distortion of how the face is done, like it's kind of boxed in a little bit. You've even got a little bit of like the temple that's popping out of his head. So there are some nice little details on it, but I'm probably never going to use this head sculpt. I just want him for the stoic, slightly angry expression. This one, while sculpted pretty nicely, I think there's something a little off about it, especially at an angle. It just kind of weirds me out, and then that expression just I don't know, it just doesn't do it for me. So it's got all the same kind of details that the other head sculpt does. Of course, he has an open mouth this time, so there's no real difference in quality. I think it's more so it's just kind of a weird look, and it just doesn't do it for me. It doesn't click. He does, of course, have another accessory, maybe to my benefit, so I can at least give him something. And you have this cane here. So you've got it. You can make him hold it kind of like this, where it's angled in his hand, or you can make him, kind of rest like that. So you've got a couple display options with it at the very least. He could use it as a weapon too, in some fashion. But you've got a black staff here with the gold accents, and then the diamond on the top, which works really well. It's nice and clear. I always like translucent stuff, so that works, even though it's pretty minimal. It's a very Kingpin type thing. So of all the accessories that they could have given him, this is what I would like the most, and thankfully they did it. Again, it's kind of weird to get accessories with Build-A-Figures most of the time, so I'm really glad they gave us something. And you've got a couple options here. You've got two different heads to mess with, and then you've got the canes. You can at least get him into a few different poses that make him a little bit more dynamic than just standing there doing nothing. And like we do when it comes to full waves, we're going to kind of rank them from least to best, in my opinion, obviously. There's one that's a clear loser. I didn't buy it. I think it's goofy. I think it's a step backwards in articulation. Your mileage may vary on that, but of course I'm talking about the 6-armed Spider-Man. As far as figures I did buy, the one that I dislike the most, and frankly I don't like this figure at all, is the Black Cat. Goofy face, bad accessory, just not a great design. Next would be the new Symbiote Spider-Man. Not because it's a bad figure, I just don't care for the design. Frankly, the figure is just fine as far as figures go. Articulation's solid. Next would be the Build-A-Figure. And that may be surprising, but it all comes down to playability. Figures that surprised me, and this thing was kind of what I expected it to be. I'm not huge on Kingpin, but if you're a big Kingpin fan, this is the one to get, obviously. Don't even mess with that Toy Biz garbage. We've got Silver Sable next. Again, this is one that surprised me. Frankly, I liked her more than I thought I would, especially after seeing other reviews. She does have those goofy Nerf guns, and she does have kind of a wonky face, but something about it really does the nostalgia thing for me, so it just kind of gets edged up a bit. Next, another surprise is Red Goblin over here. I still think it's weird that it's Norman Osborn, Green Goblin, Carnage thing, but it works as a figure. Colors are good. He's got that cool bomb accessory. He's got a weird face with great paint apps on it. There's just not much to complain about as far as a figure goes. Second on the list would be Puma. It's just an all-around solid figure. It looks like he jumped right out of the comics. Great articulation, great sculpt, great little details here and there. The clear winner, though, is Night Thrasher. I'm a huge New Warriors fan, so this guy, you know, kind of instantly was at the top of my wants list. He was the one I was going to get before I decided to buy all of these, and I think it looks just like his comic counterpart. He's got great shiny plastic pieces. He can hold all of his accessories, which is always a plus for me, and it's one that I really wanted, and it really lived up to my expectations. So at the end of the day, this figure is basically what I expected it to be. Kind of a middle-of-the-road thing for me personally. I'm sure if you really wanted a Kingpin, then this guy is much higher on your list, and I could see why. This definitely fits the bill as far as what Kingpin should be. He is, of course, under-articulated compared to other figures. He is, of course, underpainted compared to other figures. That is a bit of a negative in some respects, but of course, this is his look, this is his build, so you can't really fault it too much. And, you know, he's going to look menacing standing on your shelf. That's really what he's meant for, and frankly, in that respect, he succeeds pretty well. I do think this wave in general is pretty weird. It's all over the place in terms of character selection, and it's just kind of a weird hodgepodge, but there are some surprising figures in here if you're willing to take the plunge, so to speak. So that's going to do it for this look at the Marvel Legends Kingpin Build-A-Figure and Wave. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.